All right, so we are in chapter 5. We are doing section 2. So eukaryotes, and section 2 of chapter 5 is the helminths. The parasitic ones are we're going to focus on. Helminths are typically the ones that you'll see with your naked eye, big guys, worms, different types of worms, and you'll at least be able to see those. Usually, the adult forms that you can see. You won't need a microscope. So helminths in general are going to be kind of larger. You'll be able to see them. They may be a male one or a female one, or that worm may have both male and female capabilities and they'd be monoecious. Our first group that we're going to talk about, there are lots of different types of worms. By the way, there are roundworms, and that's our first group here, are nematodes. There are also segmented worms like your earthworm or leeches, that kind of stuff. And we will talk about flatworms. So our first group is roundworms. So those are nematodes, and there's nematodes are everywhere. By the way, there's lots of nematodes, but not a whole lot of them are baddies. Most of them are totally harmless out in the environment doing their thing. But some of the ones that affect us, we are going to talk about. So out of the nematodes, these guys are roundworms. They are not going to be the segmented stuff like your earthworms. One of our common ones is Ascaris. And so we can see here that Ascaris are going to be picked up in eggs that are going to be out in the subject's poop. Somebody has pooped out the eggs, a person, somebody, and somebody has come along and messed around in the environment, gotten it on their hands, didn't wash their hands, and then ingested the egg-filled poop. So they brought it into their body. So now it's in their intestines. And what happens is it's going to come out of its egg, and that larvae is going to be in the guts. It's going to bust out of the intestines, go into the bloodstream, and it's going to swim around the bloodstream, and it's going to try and find a way out. And one of the thinnest places in your body is at your lungs, because you want that place to be really thin so gas exchange can happen at your lungs. So it goes to the alveolar sacs in your lungs, and it busts on through there. So that larvae comes out of the bloodstream and it gets into your lungs. And then it's going to crawl up from your lungs, up the bronchioles, up the trachea, and you're going to cough this stuff up and swallow it down back into your intestines. And then it turns into an adult. So now we've got the adult form, and sometimes these guys can get a really bad infection and they will clog up the intestines. But sometimes symptoms are not near that bad and it's just a mild cough. But again, it can be severe. It can block the intestines, like in this picture here. So that is Ascaris. It is a type of roundworm, a type of nematode. Then we have the most common nematode in the US is this stuff, and it's pinworms. This whole section is just gross, by the way. Pinworms are going to be picked up in the environment in their eggs. So how do you get the eggs in the environment? Well, the adults are living in the intestine here, and that female is going to come out of the intestine at night, and it's going to come out of the anus and leave its eggs around the outside of the anus, and it's irritating and annoying and itchy. And so the infected person scratches it and then gets it on their hands, and then they touch things and spread it to other people or on surfaces. And then other people can pick up the eggs that way. And the eggs can live on surfaces for, oh, what did it tell us? It tells us in the textbook somewhere how long those eggs can live in the environment. Ooh, I want to say it was like 18 hours. I'm trying to find it for us. Where are you, pinworms? Okay, I can't find it. I know it's in here somewhere. But those things, again, they leave their eggs outside, and then you scratch it and spread it to others, leave it on other surfaces, and then other people pick it up. Lots of people have been infected by this. It's mostly common in kids, of course, because kids don't wash their hands. But these are pinworms. They are the most common nematode infection when we're talking about us in the US, and nematodes and the roundworms. Pinworms are it for the most popular nematode infection. Other nematodes are hookworms, and you can pick these up if you are walking around um, out in the environment. They are going to infect your cats and dogs. And if you have a dog who is a rescue, say, like I do, and you don't know if that dog is dewormed yet, that dog can be shedding these in your backyard, and you walk around without any shoes on, and you can pick these guys up because they can burrow through your skin. These are hookworms. So the larval form burrows through your skin and gets into you, and it will leave its eggs and release those out. Um, these are hookworms. So just be careful if you have a pet and you're not quite sure if they have been vaccinated and dewormed, that you are taking precautions and not walking around barefoot out there because you don't want to be exposed to hookworms. And then we don't need to worry about these, but your pets, your dogs and your cats, if you got them at home, hopefully are on heartworm preventative, because Dirofilaria immitis is the heartworm, and that gets transmitted by mosquitoes. So every summer you run the chance of getting an infection, your pets do. That can lead to heartworm, and it takes a while for it to get really, really bad. So hopefully you're on preventative for your pets, and they should be good to go. Those are hookworms. Another type of roundworm is trichinella. Trichinella you are going to pick up, not in the environment, you are going to pick up trichinella by eating undercooked meat. Um, and this one, trichinella, you eat the raw meat, and those cysts that are in the meat, those guys will hatch. The larvae will migrate. Typically they migrate into skeletal muscle and form this cyst right here in the skeletal muscle. Sometimes they migrate in places they shouldn't go. Sometimes they end up in the central nervous system and cause cysts in your brain. So this is trichinella. This is typically not a big issue here in the US. We don't really have to worry about this. But if you happen to travel to another country, this is something that you might want to think about, and make sure that your meat that you're eating is cooked all the way through, so you do not get trichinella, trichinosis. Sometimes it's just shortened to trichinosis. Another one is the guinea worm. This one is super rare. I want to say it's only in, yeah, there it is, Chad, Ethiopia, Mali, and South Sudan. You pick it up from water, and unfiltered water that's got these guys in it, and then it takes a while for these things to grow and develop. And then about, I think the textbook said about a year later, this blister forms, and then the worm tries to come out, but you can only get out about a centimeter a day. So that's the way that you would extract the worm out of yourself. But these, again, these are really rare. They're pretty much eradicated except for in these few countries left. I want to say there was like 50 something cases when I looked it up last year. So super rare guinea worm. So those are all roundworms, nematodes. We're going to move on to flatworms. Flatworms are in the Platyhelminthes phylum. So a way I remember that flatworms and Platyhelminthes, it just helps me remember this. I say Platyhelminthes in my head. It sounds ridiculous, but it helps me remember that platy is flatty, and these are the flatworms. Whatever helps you remember this group. There's 4 classes here. There's Turbularias, there is Monogenes, Trematodas, and Cestodas. We are only going to worry about this guy and this guy for us. Turbularias, that is where our planarians, if you've messed around with planarians, they're in this class, but we don't need to worry about this class. And Monogenia are parasites of other things like fish, but not us, so we don't need to worry about those. But we do need to worry about Trematoda. So these are liver flukes, and we can see that they're going to have this sucker that they will get into the bloodstream, travel, and form cysts inside the liver, hence the name liver flukes. And then we've also got our tapeworm. Do we have a nice picture? Yeah, here's a good picture of the tapeworm. The head of the tapeworm is this. This is the scolex right here. This is the head of the tapeworm. And so both these guys are going to get someplace where they want. These are parasites, so they're going to suck out the nutrients out of our bloodstream for themselves. So they will hook in here, and then they've got suckers here, and that'll attach to your intestinal wall for the tapeworm. And then these guys will reproduce. They will leave these proglottids. This is a really long one, and these all are little segments that come off the end that just break off. They produce these little things called proglottids. And the segments are what are going to have the eggs for the next generation. So the segments, the pieces of tape out of the tapeworm, break off in the stool, and that's how it gets transmitted to others. So Trematode is going to have our flukes, our liver flukes. There are different ones. There are liver flukes and intestinal flukes, tapeworms, and then schistosomas. So this one is one where we pick them up in the water. They have two hosts, like some of these other guys have two hosts. We said we've got the host for the pigs, and then we pick them up and we're the second host for trichinella. For schistosoma, there's two hosts too. So there's a host in the snail, and then it's going to leave the snail and go into the water stream, and it will burrow into our skin as we're in the water and infect us. And there's three different ones in this picture. We got A, B, and C, and they'll live in different places where they decide to hang out in our body. A and B like to hang out in the bowels and our guts, and they will release their eggs and circulate their eggs into the bloodstream in the liver, or it will release them into the bloodstream, go into the mesentery, into our guts, into our colon and intestines, and the eggs will get out that way. And then C1 goes to the bladder, and that's where it's going to attach on and release its eggs that way. But schistosoma infects snails in the water, and then its larvae comes out of that and comes and infects us, and gives us schistosomiasis. And here it is. I knew there was a picture about the tapeworm. So the tapeworm's life cycle, we saw the scolex, we saw the hooks and the suckers on there, and it's going to hang out in our intestines as an adult, and they are going to release these proglottids out into the environment, and that gets picked up on this cycle for the tapeworm. Later on, when we get to these other chapters, when we talk about the intestine chapter and all the different things that infect the intestine, we'll go into a little more detail on all of these guys. But right now, we're just kind of grouping them together and introducing you to them. Checking in on Sarah, who has ringworm, and the doctor was testing her, did the Woods lamp, and it glowed. And so he's pretty sure that she's got ringworm going on there. And Sarah was freaked out because she thought it was a worm, but he's telling her that it is not a worm, that it is ringworm, and it's highly contagious. Kids get it all the time. Probably most of us in this class have had some kind of experience with ringworm at some point in our life, whether you were an athlete or you picked it up as a kid or whatever. But this is Sarah, and she's trying to figure out what she's got. She's a little nervous about it, but he's trying to put her at ease. All right, so that finishes this talk, and we'll come back and we'll do fungi and algae and lichens in the next video.